Fantasy settings love a weird weapon, from chain weapons to laser swords to energy bows. But while a magic sword is a classic weapon for a main character, in a lot of settings even the normal folk wield things that are a little bit strange. After all, nothing makes a character stand out from a crowd more than giving them a unique bit of kit. And while some of these distinctive items have a strong basis in history, many of them would have been quite rare on an actual battlefield. And others might not have been very useful at all. So today I'm going to take some of those weirder bits of kit, talk about their pros and cons, and maybe test some of them out. But there's a problem, because while my collection of equipment is big enough that it would seem unrealistic if you found it in a post-apocalyptic game, there are a lot of bits of kit that I don't have. Which is why I'm all the way down here in Hereford, where you can find the largest number of blacksmiths per capita in the UK to train with Historia Normannis and raid their kit box. But even here, surrounded by smiths and weapons nerds, there are a few things we're missing. So first things first, to the forge! After these messages. What is the best weapon for a fantasy character? Even in real life, the answer depended massively on context. A setup that's designed to be effective for dueling might struggle in an open battle against something heavier, and something that lets you be fast and mobile might be less use against armor than something with a bit more mass. But fantasy makes it even more complicated. A shield that protects against arrows might not help if you need to cast spells, while a weapon that relies heavily on intimidation might be less useful against mindless undead. But then there's the character. Some characters will prefer a backup weapon with secondary applications over a more martially effective sword, while a simple ranger who's carrying an expensive backup might have a story to tell. Ultimately, a fantasy character's choice of weapon can be more than just a bit of equipment. It can be a tool for giving information about both the character and the world they live in. And if that's the way you like to tell stories, World Anvil has you covered. Whether you're creating a single character or an entire setting, it has tools for making interactive maps, tracking character relationships, building backstories, and creating factions and more. With World Anvil, it's easy to keep track of every aspect of your character and make even the simplest decision part of your story. So whether you're a player, a GM, or a writer, you can download World Anvil from the description below or the link in my bio and start telling your story. Alright, I'm here at the forge with Ben and Vincent, and we are going to make some stuff. Alright, the word "we" might have been a bit of an exaggeration here, but cue the montage! Yep. Let's get started. First things first, and for no other reason than that we've got to start somewhere, let's have a look at hammers. Now, a realistic sized historical warhammer might look something like this, but when you find them in fantasy, they're very often a lot bigger and a lot heavier. And the problem with this is that it takes a damn lot of effort to swing the thing around, and if you need to change direction in response to someone else's movements, it's not easy. And given that actual weapons of that size tended to be more likely to be either hollow or smaller in their mass and could be swung more quickly and direction changed more easily, then it seems like a bit of a waste of effort to have something that chunky. But there are some upsides. In a fantasy setting where some characters are stronger than others, even with good form, there's a limit to how much you can block one of these. So unless you're incredibly confident with your dodge timing, you're better staying out of their reach. But how would something like this fare against a shield? Let's give it a go. How was that?
Unpleasant.
Like, you absolutely would have had time to stab me afterwards.
Yes. Another?
Do you want another?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if I can get that round fast enough, there's something in it. It properly throws you. The only way that I'm going to get you there is by dodging out of there and being in position before you bring it round. But if you're fast enough, you can swing that faster than I can turn, then I'm screwed. Yeah, that is not... even if I stab you, you're still going to cave my head in.
Like, just dropping it on someone's going to hurt. If you killed me before I got the swing in, that fall I think would be great. You wouldn't want to have it in battle, like, as a regular human, but if you've got some giant race coming up against you, that's horrendous.
So, if a character is that strong, if you've got a Minotaur or a Cyclops, or, I don't know, even a particularly burly Orc, and they've got something like this, or, I don't know, a blacksmith in a situation where you're not necessarily fighting trained soldiers, but you're like defending your home or something, there probably is some potential. I certainly wouldn't want to go against it. No. And then there's the Morningstar. This is not necessarily representative of these. The word is used to describe anything from a one-handed mace to a flail. It's basically any weapon that has a metal ball with spikes in it. But these are a relatively common type of them. The ball itself is hollow, because if this thing was solid, it would weigh an absolute ton. And what that achieves is something that's still quite heavy for a polearm, but it gives me the opportunity to stab, thrust, and strike, but also I can keep it back like this, strike with this end, and then make a big blow when I need to. The extended spike on the end lets it function a little bit like a spear, but the main purpose of something like this, despite the incredibly spiky bits, is not the damage that it causes, but the fear that it inflicts. These are often depicted in the hands of guardsmen and watchmen and people that would be hoping that the person they go up against isn't going to pick a fight today. And in that scenario, you probably don't want to fight one of these. One of the handy things about a design like this is that while it has spikes which are good for puncturing things in a way that a round object isn't, because they're on all sides of it, you don't have to worry about alignment. It doesn't matter which way around you're holding it. When you swing it, it will hit spike first. Now at this point I looked around for a responsible adult and it turned out it was us. So we ran a few shield tests with this, at the end of which we managed to knock the mace head loose.
That's amazing. Right, you can see like the squares at the very tip of my blade just there. Big squares, and they probably go almost the thickness of the shield itself. Like, it hasn't popped through, but that's gone really deep. That's probably gone about 80% of the thickness of the shield. Which was probably the very last hit which you saw there. So, wow, incredible.
And just to reassure any fans of Old Lucy, there was no permanent damage done. It was just that the ring on the top came slightly loose. So we managed to knock that back in with a hammer, and now it is back in a form for striking. No rattles to be found. And then there's the sling. And while the stereotypical sling that people sometimes draw is a slingshot, those were not around historically because they require elastic, which we didn't have. The historical sling was either basically just this section, a piece of rope with a pouch on it, or it was a piece of rope with a pouch on it on a stick. This is a staff sling, and while you don't see these portrayed quite as often, they are pretty cool. All right, so yeah, we're out here, it's windy, but we've got space to launch them, so tell me about the staff sling.
Right, so these were probably the simplest in terms of your ranged weapons. Easier than a crossbow, much cheaper as well, even more so than your standard hunting bow. While most people would have had one, you still did a bit of training. These, it's a stick and 2 bits of leather. Yeah, you stick it on, you put a rock in there, and you throw it. It could take 5 minutes to learn how to do it, and within an hour you can do it effectively in order to throw enough big rocks over a fence at an advancing army.
Well, it just so happens that I have some rocks.
How convenient. Right, so now
this isn't staged at all.
So I'm going to put my rock in there. I'm going to show you how to do these. Well, it's horizontal, aiming like that. Now, just in case I get this wrong, don't stand directly behind me. All right.
I'm going to step out of frame.
Like this, and with a single forward motion, ideally stopping relatively vertical. This was particularly good for those who were used to doing any sort of manual labour, especially involving hammers, because this sort of motion here, yeah, hammering, blacksmiths particularly good at this. Obviously, you would have had blacksmiths being much more useful making weapons and such, but in a pinch, anyone who could swing a hammer for putting up posts and things like that would be very used to this style of movement. Oh, it's gone up a bit.
It's gone up a bit. It's not so much an accuracy thing, is it? It's more about
you're lobbing it into an advancing army, yeah?
That's somebody that you don't like.
Yeah, that's the thing. You get enough speed on these, you're essentially throwing an almost fist-sized rock at someone over a fence. Yeah?
And compared with a normal sling that you might have to sling around a little bit to get it going, these can be done in a battlefield formation with a bunch of people in a line without taking up too much space. And whoever stood in that direction has a sad time. Sorry, I've just got to get this on camera so that we can talk about it. Ben, can you tell me again how you make these safe for reenactment?
So sadly, we can't use real rocks in a reenactment scenario because it makes recruitment go through the window, and we don't want our friends to die. So instead of using actual rocks in combat, we use kiwis.
But something that crops up a lot more in fantasy is the scythe. Often associated with death, the reaper for thematic reasons, a scythe which was originally designed for cutting things at ground level as a harvesting tool is frequently portrayed wielded in two hands as a sort of polearm weapon with elaborate moves. The problem with that is that it's really unwieldy. Not only is this an incredibly long blade that sticks out sort of at a right angle, but even if you wanted to use it for cutting by sort of getting around somebody and pulling, the angle on the blade as it stands is designed to be level around here. So for a cut, you'd have to come in on the side and pull at an angle and twist to get around it. And you can't actually reach that much further with this than I could with something a lot shorter and one-handed, while the sheer size makes it really quite unwieldy and heavy and hard to flow with. But there was a way to make them more effective. In a pinch, and for a relatively low amount of effort, a blacksmith could take the blade on the end of one of these, turn it 90 degrees, and have it sticking out. And while this isn't a proper war scythe, it's based on a billhook, which is a similar agricultural tool that needed relatively small adjustments to become a weapon of war. And when you compare the two, the difference is obvious. The scythe just has so much less reach, is much harder to angle the point into anything, and even if I'm trying to attack you, I might be able to get your hand, but you're already in my neck. Plus, if I'm trying to fight, you could not only hook my blade, but if you got in a bit closer, you could also probably catch these bits.
Yes, probably could. Yep.
And cause me some problem. Like, that's really difficult for me to have to...
Yeah, I mean, like the actual capacity to hook onto weapons, because it's much more central line, you know, I can provide all the forces necessary to control a weapon or a shield because of that amount of extra leverage that can be used just against you.
Yeah,
like
I can't twist that where I want you to go.
But if you got me, because technically you have me as well,
Yeah.
all I have to do is just rotate and twist right off that.
But if I want to remove, I have to,
really
do a
break
quite
away.
big motion to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It looks cool.
It does.
Probably not all that useful.
No.
And another tool that was not specifically designed for war, but shows up a lot for thematic reasons, is the Trident. you look really cool standing there.
It does, yeah. I mean, it's cool silhouette, you know. What can I say? It feels badass to just hold, you know. Even my shadow looks awesome.
It shows up, like you see it in all the classical mythologies.
Yeah.
You've got like Poseidon with his trident. You've got the gladiators that wielded them in gladiatorial combat. And so they've made their way into fantasy through that. You see, like any seafaring folk use it. It's a standard martial weapon in D&D. It's not like a niche bit of kit.
I'm sure if I asked anyone, you know, a picture of this, some people may even associate it more as a weapon than even a tool sometimes because they've seen it so many times depicted.
But what they're originally for was for fishing, right? You've got 3 barbed heads on it, so you're more likely to catch and snag something, and it's less likely to get away after you've stabbed it. That's why they've got the throwing property.
Yes.
But you have made this.
I have, yes.
And you've pissed about with it a little bit.
Yeah, I did. I did some sparring with someone earlier on. As soon as I made it, actually, it was barely cooled down for me making it, and I put it on the haft, and I did some light sparring with my friend, and I discovered something really effective about it. As if I managed to actually get a intersect onto the shaft, if I just twist slightly, it becomes very difficult for you to remove that.
Yes. The barbed shape there is locking into the weapon, and even though this is just a smooth haft, it's quite difficult to
by the time
you've
managed to get that away, someone else beside me could have just stabbed you.
Yeah, and you're already in a stabbing position, so while I'm trying to pull back like this, if you wanted to release that quickly, you can get me before I realise what's happening.
Yes. Yeah, so something else about it reminds me of axes, is the fact that because it's protruding off to one side, I can do this, pull, and your shield completely goes to one side.
Yeah.
And even if I don't take advantage and stab you, someone
Somebody
else
else
beside me
can.
will, you know?
Yeah. Which is kind of upsetting, really, because to be honest, when I wanted to talk about this, I assumed it was going to be rubbish as a weapon.
Yeah, but I've been pleasantly surprised by it, you know. Like when I wanted to make a trident because of all the different depictions that I see, but I didn't expect it to be actually quite good. Obviously, there are some limitations with this. Compared that to a spear, which is a lot more versatile of a weapon, and still, in my opinion, because not only is it, you know, it does have a point that you can use to stab, but because it's got 3 points, it definitely would limit on its penetrative power. You know, a spear is dedicated for just that one thrust, but if there were massive protrusions out in the way of that blade, I can imagine that could snag on things, get caught on things, you know.
How much harder is it to make something like this than a spear?
Yes, now a spear obviously is just a point that goes up. You know, you can make a socket, you can make a point upwards, and then just, you know, put bevels in it, and there you have.
You knocked one together in the forge.
I did, yes. I know what you saw me
relatively
make.
straightforward, yeah.
Yeah, relatively simple. But this, I had to start from a bar, split the bar in 2 different places, bend the bar out, upset the corners really nice and tight to make sure, you know, it was actually strong. You know, this cross section you see here was in itself quite difficult. And then I had to awkwardly maneuver it in different places in order to make the different prongs, forge down the edges, while still being able to bend it round and have the right amount of length at the end. So I had to do a whole bunch of other things in order to even make this, to have it equal and have enough mass where I needed it to be.
Do you think that they might have been more popular in like ancient classical times? They might have been more likely to be made of perhaps cast bronze or something a bit easier to work with?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because yeah, bronze, you can just make that cross straight away. You don't have to actually forge it. You know, all you have to do is fettle it, take down edges with, you know, some form of abrasive, but really that was all you had to do. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Cool. So it is a very relatively viable weapon, but it's got a bunch of limitations that would explain why you didn't actually see it on a battlefield. Yes. Cool. I think that's like, unless there's anything else you particularly want to say or do, or whether you want to try throwing it or anything like that.
That's a good point. I could chuck it. There's something about a trident where you're holding it, it just feels throwable, right? I want to throw it. I have a primal urge to just chuck this, right? But I don't know how good it is to chuck. Let me just chuck this. Oh, it feels good to throw. Right.
Nice!
So, you know, I don't even have to hold it, right? It went in, and it went all the way through.
You can see the back end of it there.
That's incredible. Like that is solid wood as well right there. So like, I'm very shocked at that. And if you see, I will pull it out if I can. Come on, let's go. You'll see that is a good, maybe, I don't know, about 5 mil thick and about 4 mil across. That is a thick point right there. It's been rounded. It's
not sharpened at all.
Yeah.
And the effort it took to remove this, like, it doesn't matter that someone's blocked that with a shield. This shield is not any use for a while.
Yeah.
And then there's flails. Fantasy settings flipping love a flail because they look weird and distinctive. You can really make a character stand out by having them. But they did exist historically as well. This is a reenactment safe version, so it's safe version, so it's round, but even so, it will pack an absolute wallop. The key with things like this is being aware of where the other end of it is at any given point in time. And while they have a few limitations compared with more rigid weapons, the flexibility of them also has some advantages. For this demonstration, Ben is kitted up in full bowhurt gear so that he doesn't get overly damaged. But as a general principle, if I were to try and hit you with a sword and you bring your shield up, I'm kind of limited in what I can do to get around that. But if I have a ball on a chain, I can go over the top and still clock him in the head. And even if they try and parry with a weapon, they can still get clocked. But not all flails look like this. Some of them were a little bit bigger. Threshing flails were used for, what the heck were they used for, Ben?
So we're used for threshing wheat.
Threshing wheat. They were a farm implement, and they were basically just 2 lengths of wood stuck together with a chain, which acts more like a hinge than a rope. But that meant they were longer and they had more reach. So if I want to go up against a big nasty knight in armour, I don't have to get quite as close. You have to clock him in the head over his shield. And they would have studied these sometimes, right? Or wrapped
If they had
bands
the
in them?
time and the money, absolutely they would have. They would have put nails in the end of it if it's for war, but it still works as a club on the end of a chain, and it still gets around a shield either way. If that was studded and swung with like a knot just made of pallet wood, like it would absolutely be breaking stuff. Yeah, and bear in mind as well, they didn't tend to use that sort of threshing flail by the time that like full plate armor was a thing. Like you could still absolutely concuss with it with a few studs in that. Every swing of that hit me somewhere. Like no matter where I blocked, it was still coming round and knocking me.
But there's one weapon that crops up in D&D quite a lot that's weird, not particularly because of how strange it is, but because of how it's a standard weapon there and not almost anywhere else. And that is the dart. Although it's often depicted in a lot of bits of media as looking a bit like a pub dart, it was probably more intended to be like one of these. This is a Roman-style plumbata. It's got a weighted section in the middle which would originally have been made out of lead. It's heavier than a regular dart. It's more like a lawn dart designed for warfare. And you can chuck it! Because they're relatively small, you could keep several of them in a shield and chuck them to disrupt an incoming charge. It doesn't particularly matter whether they're taking people out, because they're forcing them to stop what they're doing to either block with a shield or to watch out for these darts that are flying towards them. It's an excellent thing when you're in a formation to stop the people running at you from being able to just do what they want. The fletchings on the back mean they stabilize quite quickly, so even if you throw them a bit dodgy, they kind of end up going point first. So they're an excellent thing to just grab out in a rush and throw. Oh! Yeah, I think if people are starting to get hungry, we want to grab
Oh, nice!
And while they lack the mass, range and penetrating power of a more traditional javelin, a war dart's smaller size meant that it was easy to carry several of them and just throw them quickly in a short to mid-range combat. And there are loads more weird and wonderful weapons that crop up all the time in fiction, but those are a few of the ones that come across as standard that are a little bit more niche in real life. Some of them, like the war dart or the Morningstar, actually existed and were used in war, but just a lot more rarely than they seem to be in fantasy. Others, like the maul, are something that was really only an improvised weapon used in a pinch by people who were strong enough, but as an actual primary weapon for warfare would only really work if you had some kind of superpower. And then the Trident sits in a weird place where it actually is a reasonably viable weapon of war, except for the logistic aspect of being way harder to make than it has any reason to. And in fact, when you look in later sources, there are versions of polearms that regain that trident shape when it got a little bit easier to forge things like that. But for a very long time, they just weren't as viable as a spear and don't have enough of an advantage to be worth using. Let me know below if there's weapons you'd like to see me cover in future videos, and in the meantime, here's a little bit more from the people I've been working with on this one.
For those of you wondering about Historia Normannis, the fighters who you've seen in the video today, we are a Norman Plantagenet reenactment group based in Hereford and all over the UK. Currently, Historia Normannis Hereford are trying to raise a little bit of money to help with our storage. We have a lot of weaponry, we have a lot of tentage, we have a lot of living history, tools, we have weapons, we have a lot of stuff. And we're trying to find a way the story that isn't just my mouldy garage. In order to accomplish this, we are all travelling up Lord Hereford's Knob, which is a nearby large hill, and we're going to be doing it in authentic kit. We shall also be filming it, and to be a little bit more entertaining for everyone, at £400 raised, we should be doing it in full armour. At £800, we should be doing it in authentic shoes. And at £2,000, I should be wearing full armour down to my legs, covering literally every part of my body except the soles of my feet, the palms of my hand, and my eyes. I will not be enjoying this whatsoever, and would rather you didn't raise £2,000, but any little bit helps, I suppose. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere. Please contribute should you wish to. And if you don't, that's fine too. You're still more than welcome to watch us fumble up a hill in armour. Thank you for your support.
I'm going up the knob.
I'm going up the knob.
I'm going up the knob. I'm going up the knob.
I'm going up the knob.
And I'm not, but I support them going up the knob.
Yay!